yes, the intakes to make your car increase horsepower, the exhaust to upset your neighbors. The suspension will max out so it looks cool and completely removes the entire point of having a functional suspension. And the real wheels we'll buy to brag about, but then buy terrible tires because we ran out of budget. Such is life, and since we sell aftermarket wheels, tires, suspension, performance parts, and more at MartiniWorks.com without selling our soul for profit margin, we're back to help you not mess up your car build. And if you're about to buy something for your car, you should listen up. I'm Alex Martini. Follow us along on all socials, and in today's episode of Don't Mess Up Your Car Build, we're talking about performance parts. Now, because I have this thing where I just have to always keep things organized, we've broken up this video into sections, so use the timestamps if you need to jump around. But we encourage you to watch the whole thing on the big screen. Performance parts has to start with tires. Now, the very first mistake that you're gonna make out there is not investing in them. There's so many times where I see people, they go all in on the wheels, they go all in on the intake, exhaust, or tune, but they forget about the tires. That's the thing with performance parts, is that if you already have a sports car that can go fast, and then you make it faster, but you keep stock tires, or even worse, you get really bad tires, you get tires that are just super cheap, nobody really knows anything about them, you're just gonna have a bad time. Now, that doesn't mean you need to spend a lot of money either, and that also doesn't mean you need to buy the most performance-oriented tire out there. I'm gonna give you a really good example. We're fans of Continental for a lot of different reasons, but one of the main reasons I like talking about them specifically for performance people is because they have two key tires that do a lot for people like you and people like me. The DWS 06 and the ECS 02 are both fantastic tires. The ECS 02 is mostly a track-oriented tire that can handle a little bit of street, whereas the DWS 06 Plus is predominantly a street tire that can give you a little bit of that track performance. But the thing that I love about them both isn't just that, it's the fact that it comes with everything else. It comes with a huge warranty. It comes with a massive mileage warranty. It comes with the fact that you get a whole bunch of like roadside assistance and a bunch of bonus stuff that a lot of times you don't know you'll need until you need it. I've ran Contis before in the past and I've absolutely loved them. They balance out really well, they wear really well, they handle a lot of the stuff up here really well, and the best thing about it is they handle a variance of weather super well. A lot of times tires can be built to handle a very specific type of weather condition, but the moment you take them out of that little tiny window, they chunk up, they deteriorate, their tread goes to super fast. And I know we're talking about performance parts, but a lot of times the more niche you get with a certain tire, a lot of times that you're gonna narrow in on what that tire is intended to do. Most of the times we're modifying our daily drivers. I modify my daily drivers until I have to buy another daily driver. That's just how the world works. With Continentals, especially that DWS 06 Plus, the range of how you can use it is so wide, and the sizing that's available on it make it a fantastic option. It doesn't mean you can't go with something more affordable or cheap, but the thing that I'll say is if you're cutting corners specifically on tires and you're trying to get into something performance oriented, it's a complete waste of time. All right, so let's get into number 2. All right, this, my dear friends, is a black diamond wheel for the 430, and on it is one of my favorite tires of all time. This is the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S. Almost all of my cars run Michelin. I am a Michelin snob. I continue to be a Michelin snob, and I also love my boys over at Continental. A lot of people argued with me on a short that I did one time where I said, hey, when you put a new tire on a wheel, you don't want to go rip around on it because there is a very thin film oil on these tires that needs time to burn off, usually around 50 to 75 miles. And a lot of people said that wasn't true. Bullshit. I talked to Michelin. That's the joys of being a part of the industry. I actually asked them, do you still do that? They said, yes, we absolutely do that because of transporting, and to get the actual tire out of the mold, you need to have a lot of different materials that will actually lay on top of this. And when it gets delivered to your house or gets delivered to your shop, or you buy your wheels and tires over on MartiniWorks.com, you're gonna see and feel that oil that's on them. Don't beat the crap out of your tires when you get them on the car right at the beginning. You're gonna experience a really bad traction issue, and a lot of times it's gonna feel less grippy than it's actually intended to be. Now, with Michelin specifically, they love to make sure every single tire that comes out of their factory is perfectly round. They actually take a lot of pride in it. I love Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's because a lot of times I don't actually have to balance out the tire being out of round at all. The BBS CIRs, the Unlimiteds that I have that were thrown back on this car, actually, when we went to mount and balance them, we actually didn't have any weights on the wheels. That is a huge thing to brag about, which I'm bragging to you about right now. Good tires are 100% investing in. Totally honest with you, I would say in order of performance parts, you go with an exhaust, you go with good tires, you go with wheels, you go with coilovers. I love it that way. Do whatever you want. That's the way that I would see it. All right, so up next is exhaust. You don't see me yet, but I'm going to show you something. These are exhaust manifolds, okay? And at some point or another, you might want to do this. These are Valtronic exhaust manifolds. We have Valtronic over on the MartiniWorks website. Predominantly do like Euro cars and supercars and things like that. Really good quality. I love them because they have a valve that's included in almost all of their kits. They also have a universal muffler that's actually really kick-ass. But one of the key things here that you need to keep in mind is when you get stuff like this, especially with exhaust, it doesn't mean that the way that this is right now is how it's going to go in. For instance, the 430 specifically needs their manifolds heat wrap. Even though you can just install these, bolt these up, you're good to go. Even though the OEM ones don't have it, it's still recommended by everybody and their mother that you need to heat wrap these things. All right, now I'm gonna show you something yucky. Come on over. All right, so the big tip that I have on the exhaust is sometimes it's hard to understand the value. How would you spend so much money on what's nothing more than just a bunch of pipes? There is a threshold where it just becomes status or it becomes rare, whatever it is, but there are other times where the value is seen in particularly how things mount up. I don't know if this is Borla's fault, I don't know if it's the previous owner's fault, but whatever it is, here's a prime example of what happens when you really start to mess up. Here we have a gasket and we have this flange and it never seated correctly. Either this was bent from Borla or this was bent from the previous owner on the BMW. But either way, the person decided to solve it by welding it together and then putting a bunch of what seems to be seam sealer all around it because that should fix the exhaust leak. This sort of stuff isn't a problem for current you, but it is a problem for every future owner. And we had to get a whole new mid pipe because there's absolutely no way we were gonna get this off. We can't save the Borla exhaust, we can't save the mid pipe. We end up spending an extra $400 on getting a new mid pipe on top of the axle back exhaust that we have from Valtronic because something here went wrong. There is value in getting the right stuff because this sort of thing is usually something you don't have to deal with if you save a couple more pennies and get something that's actually relatively good quality. And if you don't trust the brand, trust the reviews. Go out there and take a look and see what other people are saying about the company and about the part itself. And if there's no reviews on it, that should tell you enough. And finally, exhausts are awesome. I love them to death. But 10, 15 years ago, it was so much easier to just throw silly shit on your car. Nowadays, you can't. When you throw a big exhaust on a Subaru or you throw a big exhaust on a Nissan Z, it doesn't like you. It doesn't like you at all. And it starts to throw codes and it starts to detune itself because it's scared you're gonna blow it up. Exhaust and intake go into mistake number 3 and mistake number 1, not getting a tune. Okay, most new cars are really starting to almost require a tune if you want to keep it within tolerance of what it's intended to do. If you're playing with a turbocharged platform, you're gonna want to tune it. If you're not dealing with a turbocharged platform, you're typically able to get away with it a little bit more. Now, we've seen this a lot because we run InGen and K&N on the website. InGen's a more affordable air intake system. K&N is kind of, I would say, a little bit of a higher quality. I know a lot of times people say, well, we don't get horsepower gains, blah, 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 blah. Totally platform specific, okay? But they've both had to make revisions to how they develop their intakes in the last few years, specifically because of 2 reasons. Number 1, the OEM air intake systems are actually really good. And sometimes an aftermarket intake doesn't do anything in terms of performance numbers. Pair that up with the fact that you need a tune if you're playing with intake and an exhaust, and you're actually gonna be starting to set up your car for some really good time. Now, jumping into performance parts, a lot of people will make a 500 horsepower car, no ifs, ands, or buts about it these days. Toyota Supras can do it, Nissan Zs can do it, pretty much everything short of the sun can do it these days. What happens though, is a lot of people don't jump into the safety and harnesses conversation because apparently safety's for losers. It's not. It's good stuff to have. Here's the thing though. Mistake number 1, especially with like seats or harnesses, particularly with harnesses, is installing them at all. Okay, now this is a personal preference, but when we put in aftermarket seats, we do try to retain the actual stock seat belt. If you can, if it's still safe to do so, we do. A lot of times when you go into that multi-point harness thing, you're running on like a 5-point safety harness and you're in a street car, it looks cool, but over time it's gonna get really, really annoying. With that being said, harnesses are just a general pain in the ass, okay? For multiple reasons. Number 1, the good ones are expensive. Number 2, the good ones are expensive and they expire. Just like a helmet would, a seat belt can actually expire. Your OEM ones, I'm sure somebody's gonna say that they do, but they don't. You can just run them forever. Aftermarket seat harnesses typically do expire and they're expensive. They're like $1,000, $800 if you get the right ones. And in my opinion, you don't even need to jump into it. The biggest joy of it all is that when you look at performance parts, it allows you to do anything. You can do anything you want. There's so many things out there, so many different types of parts and products. Performance parts are a little bit like opinions, and opinions are like assholes. They stink sometimes, and not all the time are you right. With performance parts, it's the same thing. The whole reason we're here is just to help you if you are looking to understand performance parts just a little bit more. Now, that's not to say that you don't know your own couple, 2, 3 tips, so drop them in the comments below on one thing you wish you learned before you bought something for your car and realized that it was absolutely, completely worthless. I'm Alex Martini. If you're looking for car parts, mod your car at MartiniWorks.com. Get your car ready for the season with us, and we'll see you on the next one.